to the world of outer space, a world still little known and understood, even in our nuclear age. What you are about to see is the beginning of a voyage through space and time, a voyage which reaches from a launching pad at Cape Canaveral to the most distant star in the heavens. This is a world full of unexplained mysteries and visitations, a world of flying saucers and monsters from other worlds. It is a world of science, of fact, and fiction, a world of reality and incredible fantasy. After decades of research, man has finally conquered the moon, and Mariner, the unmanned space probe, has landed on Mars. But what about other space programs? Space programs that we know nothing about. By this, we do not mean any earthly space program. We speak of visitations from beyond our world, by creatures from other planets. What is it they want? Who are they? Why did they come to our world? What is the truth behind flying saucers? Do UFOs exist? Is there anything at all to stories of little green men? Or is it all hysteria, media hype? Sightings which can easily be explained away as weather balloons, terrestrial aircraft, or other natural phenomena. Watch now as we strip away the clouds of deception surrounding the current UFO controversy. Is there life on other planets? Find out now in UFO Mania. A photo like this raises a number of questions. It was taken January 16th, 1958 by a professional photographer. The witnesses all signed sworn affidavits. No agency has ever been able to uncover what really happened in the sky that January morning. Here we see the Corpus Christi UFO sighting, photographed on July 28, 1959. This is referred to as Library of Congress Archive reference number 341382. This sighting is included in Project Blue Book, the recently discontinued Air Force study of flying saucers and extraterrestrial phenomena. It was seen by two men, one with an 8mm movie camera, and this astonishing footage is the result. The film was submitted to the Air Force, to the Pentagon, and to various offices of the United States government. After detailed study and research, the Air Force released a statement to the effect that they could not explain what this object was, or where it had come from, or how it propelled itself. You will undoubtedly notice the trail of the conventional jet seen above the UFO. This jet established visual contact with the UFO and chased it for some miles. However, the object continually eluded the pursuing plane. Except for this filmed record, there was no other photographic evidence, since the pilot did not have a camera. When asked if the object could have been a weather balloon, the pilot replied, "At that speed?" In military parlance, the phrase unidentified flying object, or UFO, is used to indicate any airborne phenomenon that fails or refuses to identify itself to or be identified by trained observers or reliable witnesses on the ground or in the air using visual or radar methods of observation. The term UFO is somewhat misleading. It seems to imply that the unknown phenomena sighted is a solid material object, but many are not. The more dramatic phrase, flying saucer, is similarly misleading, because not all unknowns are saucer-shaped. Some, like the Corpus Christi sighting, appear as simple white dots in the sky, moving in irregular patterns, hovering, or sometimes simply standing still for long periods of time. However, since no one has been able to come up with a more accurate short term, the phrase sticks with us. Space and the creation of the universe. What were the first planets like? How were the stars and galaxies formed? Is there a world far from our own where life is developing much like life on Earth? In observatories around the world, scientists keep watch. What do they see? Their sensitive instruments see what we cannot. All the colors of the spectrum, all the wavelengths of the universe. What the human eye cannot see, the electronic eye can. Scientists take telescopic infrared pictures of the sun, of Mars, of the moon, and from a space probe, even the Earth. These thermal maps of the planets aid in spotting warming and cooling trends in climate, in detecting underground streams of moisture, and may assist scientists in their search for life on other worlds. Is there life at the center of the sun? The notion seems ridiculous, but we cannot be sure. Traditional theories have it that the sun is a ball of combustible gases with a nearly molten core. But suppose that the sun has a solid, cool core, and it is only the outer surface, which is a gaseous mass, fueled by some secret tunnels from a source of propulsion near the center of the planet. Could not UFOs, if they could channel such an enormous source of power, live at the center of the sun and venture forth to explore the Earth? Although there is no basis in fact for this theory, the notions and beliefs that UFOs may come from the sun persist. Only recently, in the summer of 1978, the United Nations chaired a top priority session to look into the matter of UFO sightings on an international basis, since the UN felt that the United States was not moving quickly enough or diligently enough to a thorough inquiry into the matter of UFOs. What results will the UN conference have? Will the U.S. finally revise its last public statement on the UFO matter? Air Force investigators and scientists working for the government and the military have been able to explain away many of the sightings, more than 80%, as some sort of natural phenomena, misreported or observed under deceptive conditions. Some UFO sightings, however, the ones we are exploring here, have never been explained. UFOs have been known to hover, change direction, come from the left and then zoom back to the right. They are also known to maneuver with a speed and grace completely unknown to our aircraft, seemingly impossible for something which is not steered by an intelligent life force. Are these UFOs, then, actually the ships which brought visitors from a faraway planet? What will happen when and if we have our first close encounter? Perhaps perhaps for all of their technical sophistication and their flight capability, UFOs are as frightened of us as we are of them. UFO was seen over New York on the 28th of July, 1952, by 3 members of an organization interested in UFOs. One of the observers snapped this photo while the object reportedly remained immobile in front of them. This picture was taken on an Air Force base on September 19th, 1957, to introduce the public to a then new type of jet. Look in the upper right corner, and you will see what this frame blow-up reveals. A UFO sighting which greatly embarrassed the Air Force. This is obviously not some freak weather phenomenon, but a solid object. At the Miyako-jima Observatory in Japan, the night shift was on duty one evening making routine observations of the night sky. Suddenly, one of the observers noted something unusual in the telescope, something which should not have been in the normal nighttime sky. The 23rd of January, 1957 was just like any other night, until they saw, hovering over the observatory, this small bright object in the night sky, moving erratically. The observers rushed out to take these 2 stills of the object. They submitted the stills to the Air Force for confirmation. Again, the Air Force found it to be completely inexplicable. While there has been no proof of any kind that this is an actual spacecraft from another planet, the fact remains that this particular sighting revealed a movement pattern in the UFO which is hard to reconcile with any known aircraft or natural phenomena. These time-lapse, multiple frame-printed films taken of the same UFO that night show that the object moved in a highly peculiar fashion, not at all like any conventional aircraft. What do you think it might be? The government has already had its chance to explain this particular sighting, and it finds it cannot. What is your explanation? The responsibility for evaluation of UFO reports rests primarily with the U.S. Air Force. Since the first UFO sightings in 1947, the Chief Investigative Air Force Group has been located at Wright-Patterson Field in Dayton, Ohio. It was known first as Project Sign, then as Project Grudge, then Project Blue Book, and finally, the Aerial Phenomena Group of the Aerospace Technical Intelligence Center, usually known as ATIC. This is archive reference number 3413457 from Project Blue Book of the U.S. Air Force. First, we show you the original film, directly as it came from the camera of an eyewitness to this sighting of a flock of UFOs flying in a cluster. Now we show you a frame blow-up of the same footage. This footage was submitted for review to the Air Force, as are most UFO sightings, and again the Air Force, after lengthy deliberation, reluctantly decided that it could not ascertain with any accuracy what the UFOs might be. At this time, the Condon report was published with a few frame blow-ups from the Tremonton film. The Condon report, which came out in the early 50s, was supposed to be the last word on UFOs as far as the Air Force and official Washington were concerned. Time has proven the Condon report to be anything but final. Proven reports of UFOs, all with documentation which has withstood the most detailed scrutiny, continued to mount. These 5 glowing discs seen in the Tremonton film, moving in a flight pattern in excess of 3,000 miles per hour, according to detailed frame analysis of the film, have defied any explanation as natural phenomena, which the Air Force has attempted to offer. Observers say that the discs gave off a slight humming sound, and that their flight pattern was consistent from right to left. The discs stopped momentarily and hovered from time to time, but generally they kept moving in a highly erratic manner. UFO number 2447N125020E. A UFO which buzzed the photographer trying to take pictures of it from his car. The man reported that it made no sound, hovered over his head for a few moments, and then vanished. These next two shots show the famous Lubbock lights, photographed on August 30th, 1951, over Lubbock, Texas. These two shots were made by a high school boy with a Brownie camera. He was one of a crowd of more than 250 people who watched the shapes in the sky form a triangular flight. The Air Force tried to tell the people of Lubbock that what they had seen were merely unmoored weather balloons. The townspeople of Lubbock know better. Here is a soybean field seen from the air. What was it that did this? Did a UFO land here? The area of the burn formed a near-perfect disc shape. No explanation has ever been advanced for the phenomena. Man takes off for the moon. With this astounding voyage into the reaches of interstellar space, mankind came a giant step closer to the understanding of our position in the universe. For the first time, man looked down from the moon to the Earth, instead of looking up at the moon from the Earth. For the first time, man could get some idea of what he would have to do in order to conquer space. The desolate landscape of the moon offered a forbidding welcome to the first space travelers. First, man sent probes to pave the way for later manned explorations. Such unmanned probes will pave the way for the exploration of Mars at a later date, probably by the mid-80s. In his voyage through space, man will have to be guided by the movements of the planets, the stars, and the navigational charts, which his amazingly accurate remote control instruments and space probes send back to him. When we touch down on a foreign planet, many thousands or even millions of miles away, what will we find? These actual telescopic time-lapse pictures give a glimpse of the universe as it really is. From these reports, we can begin to get some idea of how to explore the universe and what possibilities the stars may have in store for us. Who can tell what the future may bring? And when at last we do land on a foreign world, looking up at the planets visible in that world's sky, what will we have discovered? What will we know about other worlds, other life forms, and about ourselves? Will we be able to accept our true position in the universe? Look, what's that bright object moving through space? Is it another planet, or a star, or a comet? Or is it perhaps a spaceship from another planet, seeking a wider world to explore and to conquer? Navigation is made possible by the alignment of the planets and by accurately charting their positions throughout the course of the year. Once man finds the actual positions of the planets, he can chart his way at least through our own solar system. Our space probes send us back information about the solar system. It adds to the rapidly increasing fund of knowledge we already have. The design of the solar system, with planets rotating about the sun, is known to every schoolboy and girl. But the subtleties of the arrangement, the precise distances and speeds of planets, the gravity, the cycles of movement, they are all still being researched. And our own solar system is expanding daily. Only recently, Pluto was discovered to have a new moon, which no one thought had existed before. Every day we learn something which we did not know. Maps. Maps of the universe, maps of the moon and the planets. These are the tools with which we will find our way through the universe. Observational satellites take thousands of pictures which scientists back on Earth pieced together for a composite map of the planets. And they are fantastically accurate. Already the moon has been mapped, and the space probes continue their constant search for life on other worlds. Television cameras scan the surface of the planets microscopically. Their eyes among the stars help man to get a better view of the world outside his own. Powered by solar cells, these probes can stay aloft almost indefinitely, sending back information which is used to plot the trajectory of our coming manned space probes. On Earth, the photos are assembled by trained cartographers or map makers at mission control. All of this research so that one day we can touch down without fear on a world 1,000,000 miles away, knowing just a little bit about what we may find. But what will we find? Until the day that man first sets foot on Mars, Venus, and planets not even known to us, we cannot answer. This NASA landing craft is sometimes mistaken for a UFO. Note the disc shape and the bright, shiny metal fuselage. Inside the disc, a wealth of scientific instrumentation keeps watch on space. The probe will explore for us, without a human observer, the mysteries of other planets. In the future, man will be there to see for himself or herself. In the future, man will look out over the new frontier, a frontier which space has opened up for us. This simple pattern of lines and dots represents the way in which the solar system itself is organized. But the true organizational pattern of the solar system eluded man for quite some time. Man thought that the Earth was flat and that the sun was not the center of the solar system. In earlier times, man thought that the Earth was the center of all the other planets, and that all the other planets, including the sun, revolved around the Earth. Those who tried to prove otherwise, men like Galileo, were persecuted as heretics and sometimes paid with their very lives for such beliefs. Today, man uses sophisticated instruments such as this telescope to tell him more about the mysteries of the universe. But why must we wait? Why not now? Blast off with us, then, for a trip beyond the moon, beyond the stars, and into the far reaches of outer space, to the Red Planet. We are drifting beyond the Earth. Soon we will leave it completely behind. We are alone now, alone in space, endless, dark space. Inside, our ship is a maze of electronic instrumentation. And as we look through the porthole, we can see the Earth receding in the distance. Our ship seems so small in the inky vastness of the universe. The distance to Mars is so enormous. Can we possibly survive the voyage to Mars and back? In order to leave the Earth's orbital field, we have had to break free of the gravity of our home planet. From there, we arc across the solar system to our rendezvous with Mars. As you can see from this diagram, just a slight miscalculation would send us spinning off into the vastness of space, to be lost forever among the stars. We would never again see the Earth. We realize that our lives depend upon accurate navigation. In this overhead view of the solar system, we see that each planet has its own roughly circular orbit, and that each planet keeps its orbit because of the pull of gravity from the sun. Were this solar gravitational pull removed, our home planet would go spinning off into the black void of space, to certain doom and destruction. Planet's gravitational pull is quite strong, too. And in order to leave our home, our rocket ship must achieve a speed of 66,000 miles per hour as it leaves the Earth's atmosphere. Looking at the solar system on its side, we see that in leaving the Earth's atmosphere and stratosphere for the first layers of outer space, we must be very careful to avoid the gravitational pull of the sun, which is the strongest gravitational pull in our universe, lest our tiny rocket ship be pulled towards the sun and destroyed in a matter of a few seconds. And this is no unmanned space probe. This is man's first voyage to Mars, the planet of mystery. We have two choices in our flight path. We can leave the Earth in a counterclockwise direction towards the right, going up. Or in a counterclockwise direction going down towards the left. Either way, we must escape our Earth's gravitational pull and align ourselves with the orbit of our objective, Mars. Gigantic retro rockets smooth our ascent as we settle into the Red Planet. But this is theory, not fact. What about to us, alone in the vast blackness of the outer space, guided only by our navigational instruments. And then, trouble. Our retro rockets have failed to fire. We are unable to make our course correction. We are alone here, with no one to help us. We will have to either correct our malfunction or die. Feverishly, the crew attempts to cut in alternate backup rockets. Will we be able to save ourselves from destruction in space? Finally, at last, the rockets are functioning. The warm glow of our rocket engines is the only light except for the stars. Then, with our course correction completed, we shut down the rockets in order to conserve as much fuel as we can for our final descent. In the meantime, we will check our instruments to make sure that everything is functioning properly. Rocket ship is guided by the same principles with which sailors of old piloted their own ships across the seas. The sextant aboard our ship, although electronically capable of instantaneous navigational calculations, operates exactly the same way as the sextant Christopher Columbus used on his pioneering voyage to another new world. Now, this same ancient yet modern instrument guides us on a voyage to our new world, Mars. If we can gauge our distance from a particular planet or star using the sextant, we can figure our position in space by triangulation. No matter how far we are from Mother Earth, we will always know exactly where we are in space. The process by which we derive our exact flight path in space is a complicated one, relying on conic separation of space and choosing any one of many possible flight paths as our flight path to Mars. Sailors of old had to perform all these complicated calculations by hand. But in space, we do not have time to stop and figure out these things in simple arithmetic. 1 second's delay could mean death. Therefore, we rely on the ship's computer. The computer takes into account the angle of the signal bouncing back, the delay in time for the signal to return to the ship, and other factors, and then calculates and recalculates the precise flight path we must follow if we are to land safely on the red planet. The readout screen, with its constantly changing numeric instructions, is what tells us that the computer is functioning properly and that we are on course. Our ship has been traveling at amazing speeds, and now dead ahead we see Mars. Is there life on Mars? Do UFOs come from the red planet? Perhaps someday, when this fictional voyage of ours becomes a reality, we will know the answer for certain. Trinidad Island UFO again, seen here hovering in the center top of your screen, a bit to the left, has taken January 16th, 1958. This UFO was seen by a large crowd of people, and the governor of the island ordered the photo released to the public to further research on UFOs. In this close-up, we see the unmistakable shape of a classic flying saucer. Where did this saucer come from? Why is it visiting the Earth? This UFO was photographed May 11th, 1950. Several other photos exist from this sighting, which we will show you later. The Air Force again could offer no explanation, and they can find no trace of photographic tampering with the picture. This next UFO, archive reference number RG341, PBB691 Blue Book, was seen in the sky one evening over the Great Plains area of the United States and submitted to the Air Force, the Pentagon, and the Joint Chiefs for photo analysis. This was done, and again, no trace of trickery or any logical explanation could be found. It joins the ever-growing ranks of the sighting of UFOs in this country. This is the Montville, Ohio UFO, photographed on November 6, 1957. Archive reference number RG341, PBB482. These photos from the National Archives offer two views over an Ohio field of an object which, again, neither the Air Force, the Pentagon, nor the Joint Chiefs could satisfactorily explain. There was no flight traffic in the area at the time, and there had been no weather balloon launchings in the area for over 2 years. This next UFO, archive reference number 341 PBB460, was taken in the Midwest in 1965. Submitted to the government, they added this photo as well to their growing collection of unexplained aerial phenomena. This rock fell to Earth January 1949, and since then, no one has been able to explain either the origin or the composition of the rock. And these pictures in the National Archives, as part of their UFO collection, attest to the inexplicability of this object. What is it? Is it a piece of moon rock? Is it a piece left over from an alien spacecraft? Where does it come from? No one has yet been able to answer these questions. This UFO, photographed in the Arizona desert in September 1959, part of the National Archives, number RG341 PBB473 Blue Book, is seen here in three views to give the object added contrast. Again, the photo was submitted for detailed analysis by all government agencies. And in the absence of any plane or other aircraft being in the area at the time, and in view of reports of the astounding speed of the object, no one has been able to come up with a conclusive explanation. No photographic trickery could be detected. It enters the archive files as a genuine case of an unidentified flying object. And so the search for UFOs continues. Recent sightings have taken place in the summer of 1978 in New York, where a store owner looked up one evening and saw two flashing UFOs over a store, humming and giving off enormous amounts of light. Police were summoned to investigate and found nothing, and particularly no trace of any trickery. The store owner said that he had not believed in UFOs up until that evening, but that now he believed. When the police and news reporters scoffed at this story, the man replied, "I'm not asking you to believe anything. All I know is what I saw, and you can do what you like." Is this the voice of an unreliable witness, a crackpot? Judge for yourself. And as man learns more about the universe around him and extends his research into deepest space, plotting courses for his navigational instruments and space probes to follow, questions become important. Does the moon affect cycles of UFO sightings? Is there any correlation between the phases of the moon and UFO activity? Our probes searching the universe for new information may provide us with the answers. The surface of the moon was the first planet area to be charted and made visible to the inquiring eyes of man. By taking a series of photographs during pictorial surveys of the planet, we can learn more about that part of the moon, the dark side, than was ever possible before. What is on the dark side of the moon? One side of the moon always faces away from us. Why? Our probes send back pictures and other information which gives us a better idea of that part of our closest neighbor which before we could never see. The probe strategically plots a series of vantage points from which to take its pictures, and then automatically takes the photos and relays them by radio back to Earth. In much the same way, then, as scientists plot the surface of the moon, they can plot the geography and cartography of Mercury during the time it is closest to the Earth. Using computer-animated orbit cycles, scientists can figure exactly the rotation of the planet Mercury around its axis and chart exactly the entire surface of the planet. It is unlikely, however, that man will ever venture on Mercury, as the surface is so inhospitable to human life that extremely complicated precautions would have to be taken to prevent both the rocket ship and its occupants from vaporizing in the intense heat. Do UFOs come from Mercury? At this writing, it seems highly unlikely. Here is the Yonkers, New York UFO sighting, March 19, 1957, during which a routine home movie suddenly turned into an important document in the continuing UFO controversy. Suddenly, the sky was alive with dozens of objects, some of them obviously birds. But the others? There is an eagle flying in the center of the screen. But what are the other objects in the sky? This is Blue Book number ARF 341761. Whatever these objects are, they are apparently not of earthly origin. Again, there was no traffic in the vicinity at the time of the sighting, and other explanations based on natural phenomena that were advanced proved to be completely unsatisfactory. We offer several framed blow-ups of this footage to help you decide for yourselves. Again, this footage was submitted to all government agencies, together with affidavits and eyewitness reports describing the sound of the UFOs as terrific. And again, the film was quietly filed away with no official explanation. Man's eyes in outer space, our guardians in the solar system. Across the vast infinity of the universe, past meteor belts, and through 1,000 dangers, these silent sentinels keep watch over the skies. Is it possible that UFOs are the unmanned, computer-operated drones of an advanced civilization? Our gigantic radio telescopes keep watch on the skies, monitoring for the faintest sounds of alien intelligence. It would take many centuries for our radio signals emanating from the Earth into deep space to reach a foreign civilization. Will they answer us back? Out in space, our lonely instrumentational outposts keep watch, scanning the fog-shrouded mysteries of other planets in search of some clues that would enlighten us on the mysteries of UFO activity. In areas where there is no light, they listen for the faintest signals. What do they hear? Will we be able to communicate with other civilizations if they do exist? These ears in the sky, they are our first line of communication, barking across the universe in a lonely vigil for knowledge. Are other planets trying to communicate with us, sending out signals that we may someday pick up and decipher? On their lonely journey across space, our communications monitoring stations will send us the answer. And we wait patiently for the knowledge that we are not alone. planets spin through space in an orderly progression, majestic, imperturbable, mysterious. What mysteries do they hold? What secrets can they unlock for us when we know more about them? What is out there beyond the planets, beyond our solar system, beyond the universe, the ever-expanding universe as we know it? Luminous bodies floating through space. They have not yet told us their whole story, a story which we are only now beginning to unfold and understand. The rings of Saturn, for example, appear solid from the Earth. We are still not precisely sure what these rings are composed of. It is probable that the rings are meteor belts containing hundreds of thousands of small planetoids orbiting in a gigantic luminous cluster around the home planet. If we are still uncertain about something as mundane as the rings of Saturn, then what are we sure of? Communications satellites will tell us more about the mysteries of the planets and the universe around us, and the moon. What is happening on the moon, our nearest neighbor? Yet we know so little about it. Jupiter, our largest planet, is still a vast, unexplored continent which we know very little about. Jupiter, with a gravity strong enough to crush any man or woman who sets foot on it. Jupiter, finally revealing to us a few of its secrets as our unmanned probes in the sky draw nearer and nearer to an encounter with this mysterious neighbor of Earth's. What is the mysterious red spot on Jupiter? Noted in the computer diagram you see here. The many millions of miles the probe must cover to Jupiter would be impossible for any man to withstand in our current technology. But the probe does it easily. Then the probe sends us back information by radio, which will help us to better understand our universe. This red beam shows the path that the radio beams would travel on their voyage back to Earth. And this schematic diagram gives some idea of the enormous complexity involved in such a venture. Space, waiting to be explored, unlocked, and mined for the information it can give us. Man is fragile, like a flower. And though our galaxy seems endless, it is really just a small part of the continually expanding universe. And as we watch these three small figures recede into the night sky, we ask ourselves, are these ours? Our ships? How will man travel to other planets? What sort of ship will he use? Will he use a conventional rocket or something more sophisticated, something yet to be designed? Something which can be used again and again, instead of being discarded at a cost of millions upon millions of dollars after a single use. The space shuttle, undergoing final preparations here at Cape Canaveral, is one answer our government offers to the ongoing question of UFO technology. If UFOs do come from other planets, certainly they must return there. Our rockets are disposable, and this is costly and impractical. But a space shuttle, which could be used many times, would make space travel practical and relatively inexpensive, opening up the possibility of regular flights, for example, between the Earth and the Moon. Come with us, then, on a voyage through space, on the first space shuttle, as we challenge the mysteries of outer space. Here, the rocket is on the launching pad. Now we have liftoff, and we're off, going beyond the atmosphere, into the stratosphere, and then into outer space. The first stage boosters fall away as we continue onwards into space. Then the final fuel tank jettisons, and we are on our own. With only a few remaining rockets to guide us, we drift over the Earth, getting a fantastic view as the planet revolves below us. We see Earth one moment, and then drift off into space as we rocket across the top of the world. And then finally, we are in outer space. The doors of the shuttle open up. This computer animation view of the shuttle gives us an idea of our payload. Scientific equipment for the exploration of space, as well as a large passenger area. Of course, in actual flight, we must remain inside the ship. Spacewalking is only for those who know how to do it. The ship is capable of great maneuverability in space and can change direction and correct its course at the touch of a button. Short blasts from the shuttle's rockets prepare us for our ascent back to Earth. This has been only a trial run, with no planet as our objective. We settle back into the atmosphere, and as we do, the hull of the ship becomes red hot from the air friction. Soon we are back among the clouds of Earth. The landing gear comes down. That's it ahead, the runway. We are approaching the Earth at terrific speed. The ground is coming up almost too quickly. It seems as though we will never be able to make a landing at this incredible speed. Easy now, easy. There's the center line, just a bit lower. And touchdown. If the space shuttle is adopted, it may someday be possible for us to travel to distant planets as easily as we now travel across the country. These are 5 views of a mystery object which fell to Earth December 1971. This object seems to be a part of something, a plane, a glider, some sort of engine, perhaps part of something else as yet unidentified. What could this object be? It seems that in the last view of this series, one can see what might be described as some kind of exhaust pipe protruding from a section of the object. Again, this object has been submitted to the Armed Forces and the Air Force for analysis. It is cataloged as National Archive Reference Number ARF 341 PBB 6514.
Then again, Abraham.
Here, National Archive reference number ARF 341 PB 691 7A88. Two views of this object, which again, no one has been able to give an explanation for. Submitted to the authorities with sworn testimony, affidavits, and eyewitness accounts that no one in the military cared to contradict on the record. One must see at this point a pattern emerging. Not, we emphatically state, a pattern of any sort of clandestine cover-up, but rather a pattern of being unwilling or unable to make any sort of standing public statement as to what these objects might be. This last view is from the same sighting, same reference number, origin or type of object also completely unknown. These are the Great Falls, Montana UFOs, photographed August 5th, 1950, as they drift past a radio tower in tandem. This is archive reference number ARF 341-323 Blue Book, a fantastic 16mm movie photographed by an amateur home movie enthusiast as he was out in the fields doing some nature photography. This is one of the most convincing of UFO documents. It has been the subject of countless hours of research and numerous attempted explanations, none of which could explain away this astonishing piece of footage. This again is the Tremonton film, a better blow-up of it. This was photographed July 2nd, 1952, and archive reference number ARF 341-347-7 Blue Book applies to it. Here the UFOs move in a cluster formation of larger numbers, shifting off into other patterns from the basic hook pattern, which has dominated so many UFO reports. Again, this sighting was accompanied by eyewitness reports and sworn testimony. A note should also be made here that the government has more than 20 hours of actual sound recordings of UFOs in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. But they seem difficult to get hold of for some reason we could not discover. Here is another amazing piece of motion picture film photographed in Champaign, Illinois on June 7th, 1960. This is archive reference number 341-554. Watch the UFO drift down from the top left-hand corner of the screen to the lower right-hand corner in this slowed-down version of the original sighting, blown up 5 times. Here is the same footage in original format, again slowed down, with the UFO starting at the top left-hand corner and going again into the lower right-hand corner. As with most UFO sightings, this was photographed completely accidentally. No one saw a UFO, and no one ran away to get a camera. This footage was shot by a man making a documentary for the local government. Rockets require careful planning to a degree of meticulousness which would strike most people as ridiculous or meaningless. But particularly with a manned mission, one 40-cent capacitator could burn out accidentally. And if it happened at the wrong time in the wrong place, might not only endanger a whole mission, but threaten the lives of all the men on board. Consider the number of mishaps that have occurred since our space program began. We know of our number of failures as a matter of public record, and we know nothing of the Soviets' track record with any certainty at all. There have been fires, explosions, 3 deaths in our own space program caused by one minor little thing gone wrong, one tragic mistake. Before any project gets off the drawing board, it has to pass 1,000 critical tests. In space, there is no margin for error, no way to go back to the launching pad and start over. When your backup tanks fall away, you are locked into space for the duration of your flight. You are alone in space, and re-entry is a difficult and dangerous matter. Eventually, man may be capable of construction in space on a large scale. Major repairs will be made easily, and perhaps rocket ships and space stations will even learn to repair themselves, as in this scene, through the careful supervision of a highly sophisticated onboard computer. But it will be some time before any of this is practical, considering man's technological development. And then, too, things can sometimes just drift away, and not even a computer can do anything about it. Once constructed, space stations of the future may take many different forms, other than the traditional wheel space station with spokes in the middle of a huge gyroscopic wagon wheel spinning in space. Space stations currently under consideration for the future include this flatbed, which is highly mobile, important when one thinks of the possibility of attack by an enemy in the future, when all nations have conquered space travel. On this flatbed station, people could live on board for weeks, months, perhaps even years, though it would get a bit cramped on a voyage of such long duration. In addition to the flatbed, there is this spindle space station. But even though these types are both highly mobile, they still move rather slowly in comparison with the distances the universe has to offer. The nearest star is beyond the reach of one lifetime with conventional technology. And one sees that certainly space travel requires an entirely different kind of powering system, with some fuel and combustion process that we don't understand how to exploit yet. Perhaps another civilization, more advanced, has already found this fuel of the future and is using it to visit us here on Earth. Here is a UFO photograph near Rouen, France in March 1954. This was seen by a large crowd of French farmers and local officials who rushed the pictures to the French military authorities. However, some saucer sightings do seem to be open to skepticism. This photograph, taken on December 13, 1952, supposedly depicts a Venusian saucer taking off from the Earth. The official U.S. government position on this photo is that it is probably a fake. Here is another photograph of a UFO in front of the moon, supposedly seen on June 6, 1950. Here is a final photograph, photographed supposedly on December 13, 1952. Many people have noticed the similarity between the underside of this saucer and the underside of a standard infrared chicken brooder. Decide for yourself. Here, however, we have a genuine UFO sighting, photographed in Norway, July 24, 1957, seen by an entire town of fisherfolk as they stood down by the side of the water. It proves that genuine UFO sightings can be quite spectacular. This shot, taken at Teorema, Sicily, of two UFOs photographed over the beach in 1954, is seen both in long shot, with visible observers at the bottom of the frame, and in a close-up view. This UFO was seen by at least 20 witnesses. In all the vastness of the universe, we are only a small speck in the immense design of things. What other civilizations out there might be waiting patiently for us to be able to visit them? Perhaps alien civilizations feel that until we have mastered the uses of nuclear power for peace, we are not fit neighbors in the universal community and are waiting to see whether or not we will destroy ourselves and all that our civilization has created for thousands upon thousands of years. If we do destroy ourselves before we have mastered the art of space travel, we may be denying ourselves the greatest adventure mankind has ever been offered. This question is for us to decide and to do something about before the question of UFOs becomes completely academic. For out in the stars, there must be many other races and civilizations waiting for us to join the world of interplanetary relations in that hopefully not too distant future when mankind is ready to live in true harmony with all his neighbors. Somewhere in a corner of space, someone could be waiting. There also is the existence of a secret CIA report from the early 50s, which takes the form of an official top-secret inter-office memo to all key command personnel. The directive states that, the Condon report to the contrary, the CIA felt that UFOs probably did exist and might indeed pose a real threat to U.S. security. To release this information, the CIA felt, would be risking an epidemic of nationwide panic. The Condon report, you will remember, was the official U.S. report issued in the early 50s, over 700 pages long, with many, many photographs which can be found in most college libraries in the United States as the official U.S. position on UFOs. Looking closely at the book, however, one is struck by the fact that there are many more admitted fakes included in the photographic illustrations than there are real, authenticated ones, a few of which the Condon book does reluctantly reprint. It should also be noted that the sound recordings which the National Archives holds on UFOs were largely recorded under circumstances of impeccable security on U.S. Air Force bases by U.S. Air Force personnel and were accompanied by the sworn testimony of key Air Force military brass. These tapes are often an hour long for a single sighting, indicating that the sightings must have been of extraordinary length. Oddly enough, only in one case is there any accompanying photographic materials. Here is the Great Falls, Montana UFO, photographed on black and white 16mm film on August 15, 1950. National Archive reference number 341-323, Blue Book. Notice the erratic motion of the dot, typical of many UFO sightings. Again, this UFO report was submitted to the Air Force and all authorities who, after detailed scrutiny, pronounced it a genuine UFO sighting. We show you this film in blow-up to enable you to get a close view of the object. Now we show you a UFO sighting by military personnel under conditions of the tightest security, which took place at Luke Air Force Base, Arizona, March 3, 1953. This is National Archive reference number 341-382, Blue Book. This film was taken by an Air Force jet pilot from the cockpit of his plane while on a routine air mission testing equipment over the base. The pilot in the air suddenly noticed an unidentified flying object streaking across the sky directly in front of him, intersecting with his flight path. Here is the slate directly from the pilot's camera, assuring the authenticity of the sighting. When this film was shown to stunned military brass, not long after the pilots returned to base, they merely passed it on to higher authorities without comment. The top Air Force brass pronounced the sighting genuine, and it joined the secret Blue Book file. Authorities estimate the object at between 50 to 100 feet across, of undetermined origin, and moving at a very, very high rate of speed. It left a trail and appeared to be jet black. Eventually, the jet had to give up chase, or the pilot would not have had enough fuel to return to base. Subsequent analysis of these films has only deepened the mystery. In this sequence, We offer motion picture footage shot in Osceola, Wisconsin on July 29, 1952, with a camera whose magazine unfortunately seems to have jammed. Despite this flaw in the recording, the film offers a clear view of a disc-like object moving from right to left across the center of the screen, which we show here first in the original footage and then in slowed down, blown up format. The government accepted this sighting as genuine. This is National Archive reference number 341-357 Blue Book. The saucer moves directly towards the camera, momentarily obscuring the camera lens almost entirely. Then the object moves away towards the left, leaving the classic shadow of a UFO. Now, you have seen a great number of eyewitness sightings. Each of these sightings comes with credentials which back it up, even in the eyes of the United States government, a government which has gone on record as saying that there are no such things as UFOs, and then assembles a secret Project Blue Book file, which it only recently and partially declassified. The CIA believes in UFOs, according to that interoffice memo we mentioned earlier. Do you believe in UFOs? If not, what do you believe in? Is there life on other planets? Do UFOs come from outer space? Can life exist on other planets? What is this object floating towards us in space? A robot? A spacecraft? A UFO? A relic of a forgotten race? Man cannot conceive of a creature unlike himself, but such creatures do exist. On the surface of every planet is a gaseous layer, an atmosphere. Our own atmosphere contains oxygen and other gases. Oxygen, of course, is the gas which we must breathe to live. Who is to say what forms alien life might take? Perhaps they might not need to breathe oxygen at all. Perhaps they do not even have any sort of physical shape. Life starts very slowly, wherever it begins. The smallest forms of life are the microscopic life forms which inhabit not only our own Earth, but which might possibly form the basis of life on a planet far from our own, using a system of evolution which we can only begin to guess at. The sun is a necessary part of life as we know it. Can life exist on other planets without the sun's warming rays? Perhaps life on other planets is cold-blooded, as our reptiles are, constantly battling and interacting, fighting for food, fighting for space, fighting for existence. These microscopic life forms echo the basic struggle for survival, which is the very essence of life itself, wherever it is found. Some worlds may have a liquid atmosphere, consisting of liquid gases which serve as a spawning and feeding ground for life systems. Again, completely unlike life on Earth as we know it. Who can say what form life may take, or what life may exist beyond the reach and scope of man's feeble imagination? Strange permutations of life may exist in the atmosphere of Venus, which consists mostly of gases poisonous to us. Man cannot yet fully penetrate the thick layer of gaseous clouds around Venus. Who knows what mysteries may lie on the surface of the planet? Here we see two extremely primitive life forms exchanging food. It almost looks as if one were feeding the other. Now we know that life this simple is no great physical threat to life on Earth. But what of a plague from outer space? H.G. Wells in War of the Worlds explored this theory in reverse when invading Martians were killed off by common cold germs during the Martians' war with Earth. Could it be that some small, insignificant germ on a distant planet might bring an end to life on Earth? It could happen. And so scientists are struggling to make certain that all space probes which return from a voyage in outer space are fully sterilized to prevent the possibility of Earth's being contaminated by an alien virus. Life on other planets does not have to be animal. Crystal formations such as these can rapidly spread and could possibly contain intelligence if born in a life system different from our own. Space is a place of 1,000 different visions and possibilities. It is not too much to wonder if plant life or life of a crystalline nature might exist on some planet of which we do not even know the existence. In the vast reaches of the endless universe, all things are possible. And as crystalline life forces interact, who knows what hybrids might result and with what capabilities? Although animal life seems far more likely, we must not rule out the possibility of creatures in other forms, other shapes, and even in no form at all, a gas or a mind force. Really, scientific knowledge extends only so far as our own backyard. We have a limited appreciation of our own origins, where man came from, when life began. It would be presumptuous of mankind to assume that he is alone in the universe, or that life can exist only as he knows it. Smaller life forms transmute into more complex ones. Where will it end? Where will it stop? What will be the final outcome? Is there an alien intelligence right now, far beyond our own development in science and in culture? And if so, how does this intelligence regard us? As a friend, or as a potential source of slave labor? If alien civilizations can reach the Earth, it follows that their technology must be millions of years ahead of ours, in a far superior state of development compared to man's first beginning steps on the threshold of the stars. A simple drop of dew on a plant seems so ordinary, so simple. Could it not be that our Earth is as a drop of dew to creatures from another planet? Could it be that our own world is just a small part of the larger design of the domain of a foreign intelligence? These small creatures swim about in the vast ocean, not knowing what surrounds them or what their ultimate aim might be. Are we not much like these small animals, uncertain as to our future and our destiny? The cycle of life goes on, and man's existence is only a small part of it. We exist in a corner of a universe so vast that we cannot even comprehend the boundaries which we must inevitably explore and understand if we are to coexist peacefully in the universe. What actually is going on out there in the cold, inky, vast blackness of interstellar space? What beings, what worlds lie in the skies beyond the small distance our eyes can see, even with the best of instruments? What mysterious forces control the cycles of the planets? Things have appeared in our skies which suggest that other civilizations from distant galaxies have already solved the problems of spaceflight and are successfully visiting us while trying to remain out of sight. Are they afraid of frightening us? Do they feel that man's limited intelligence is not yet ready to comprehend the mysteries of life on other planets? In Salem, Massachusetts, July 16, 1952, the Coast Guard photographed these 4 UFOs and subsequently submitted them to the Air Force and Allied commands for analysis. The Air Force finally issued a statement that these were true, unidentified flying objects. This UFO was seen from an airplane while traveling at an altitude of 25,000 feet. This photo was submitted for verification to the Air Force, which can find no explanation for it, but is unwilling to come out and classify the object as a definite UFO sighting. These 6 UFOs were seen from the Andreev Observatory in Czechoslovakia and submitted to the U.S. government for their verification. As of this writing, the U.S. government has not yet responded to the question of their authenticity. This UFO was photographed in 1957 in Wisconsin. We present 2 views taken less than a minute apart of a silvery disc-like object floating above some pine trees. These photos were taken one morning during the course of a family snapshot session. Although the U.S. government does not formally accept these photos as genuine, they have been accepted by NICAP, one of the most widely respected UFO research organizations in the country. This is another view of the McMinnville, Oregon UFO, which we showed you earlier, a slightly wider view of the sighting. Photographed in 1950, this UFO is shown here in the final blow-up, which the Air Force subjected it to during the course of its exhaustive inquiry into the authenticity of the sighting. The UFO was declared to be genuine and defied all analysis. This next UFO, photographed in Moline, Illinois in 1967, was submitted to the Air Force for their examination after it appeared in the sky before a crowd of over 50 people, all of whom gladly offered their sworn statements as testimony to the veracity of the sighting. This is the North Pacific UFO sighting, so called by no less an authority than Condon. On page 472 of his final report, Condon shows this photograph and admits that he can find no explanation for it. This UFO was seen from American Airlines Flight 387, flying over the Midwest. Again, even Condon, in his final report on the progress of Project Blue Book, could not explain this object away, and he reprints this photo in his final report. In the vastness of the universe, it seems more than likely that some other form of life exists. Why should Earth be the only populated planet? Man knows now that the sun is the center of the solar system. But what is the center of the universe? Where does the universe begin or end? Did the creation of the universe take place in a big explosion, as proponents of the Big Bang theory would have it? A tremendous cataclysmic explosion unleashing enough energy to start a universe with life and a sun and plants and trees? Perhaps twin explosions brought the universe into being. First as a bright red cloud of gas with a white-hot center, cooling into something, then exploding again and metamorphosing into a planet over eons and eons of time. This could have been the origin of our moon, a planet that burned itself out after centuries of volcanic activity. And what of the origin of Earth? Where did life first come from? How was man formed and woman? Every faith has its own version of the story of creation, and science cannot decide for itself on any one theory to explain our presence in the midst of the galaxy. Because after all, size is relative. In the true universe, a universe we can only guess at, we may be as small as the center of a carbon atom, and the entire Earth may be just a speck in the midst of the cosmos. Who can say for certain where life comes from? What forces form the planets? And what are the limits of the universe? Are we truly the only inhabitants in all of the vastness of space, sending out emanations forever into the inky silent blackness? What of our neighbors? Will we find life on them? On the sun? Round and round we spin at the center of a controversy we struggle to understand when we still know so little about ourselves. As the Earth moves through space, pushing its way through the solar system, we must wonder. Suppose that someone asked you to imagine a universe of illimitable vastness. A universe filled with thousands of planets, thousands of stars, thousands of galaxies, infinite in size and infinitely expanding. And suppose that person asked you to believe that in all that space, in all the vastness of this infinite universe, there was only one small pinprick at a corner of the universe where life existed. Would you believe him? Wouldn't it sound incredible to you? Perhaps someday our naivete will seem equally incredible to our children. Believe in UFOs? If not, what is your explanation for the sightings we've just seen? Airplanes? Soviet test missiles? Weather balloons? Ionic disturbances in the atmosphere? Ball lightning? All of these are popular theories used to debunk UFOs. But as we've seen, they do not always fit the facts. And when they don't, it seems that UFO sightings, no matter how good their credentials, are too often ignored, unexplained, or simply not researched enough. We have saved the most astonishing documentation until last. This is the Santa Ana, California UFO, photographed on August 3rd, 1965. These three views taken by a highway inspector show the UFO hovering in front of his truck, seen through the windshield and side window of the truck's cab. Nightcap and the government both have subjected these photos to extensive analysis, along with sworn statements in the matter. This is one of the handful of photos which has been declared authentic by NICAP's photo advisor. No one has ever come forth with any proof or evidence of trickery. And indeed, it appears that faking these photos was entirely beyond the capability of anyone but a professional photographer. NICAP estimates that these pictures show a UFO about 20 feet in diameter, hovering about 75 feet in front of the truck. The highway inspector has stuck to his story for more than 13 years. These photos remain some of the most convincing UFO stills in existence. And finally, we offer this astounding bit of film taken in Camarillo, California in January 1967. It involved an actor doing a close-up in a Western movie. We show you first the entire piece of film just as it came from the studio's cameras. Here, an entire crew of actors and technicians saw this UFO, and as you will see, the cameraman panned with the object, following it from right to left. Watch the lower right-hand corner of the screen closely. The small white dot just at neck level moves along behind the actor's shoulder. The crew testified later that the craft gave off a humming sound, and as you will see, it was capable of great maneuverability. Here in blow-up, you can see the UFO emerge from behind the actor's head. Now, in slow motion, we show you the erratic pattern of the flight path, slowing each frame down 10 times, but skipping none of the frames and showing them in strict sequence. This film, Archive Reference number 341-753 Blue Book in the National Archives, caused a storm of controversy when first projected for the Air Force. The flight pattern of the UFO is unmistakable, as are the pauses and corrections the craft makes in mid-flight. If this is not a UFO, what is it? As one becomes familiar with the wealth of material in the field of UFO research, and familiar too with the way the research of that material has been handled, one becomes increasingly frustrated with the refusal of our government to do anything more than simply catalog these reports and then continue as if nothing had happened. The enormous number of authenticated UFO reports increases daily, yet nothing concrete seems to be accomplished. The recent UFO committee sponsored by the UN may be an enormous step forward in UFO research, as it catalogs hundreds of new reports constantly arriving from every country in the civilized world. Until such time as UFOs are taken seriously and not confined to members of the lunatic fringe, the mystery surrounding them will continue to deepen. Do UFOs exist? Are there things in the sky which we cannot explain or understand? Our own government admits to the existence of UFOs. The CIA believes in UFOs. Do you believe in UFOs? Teng Mu was a Chinese philosopher. In the 13th century, he wrote, "Heaven and earth are large, yet in the whole of space they are but as a small grain of rice. It is as if the whole of empty space were a tree, and heaven and earth were one of its fruits. Empty space is like a kingdom, and heaven and earth no more than a single individual person in that kingdom. Upon one tree there are many fruits, and in one kingdom many people. How unreasonable it would be to suppose that besides the heaven and earth which we can see, there are no other heavens and no other earths." The question remains, is there life out there? Either there is or there isn't. And either prospect boggles the mind. This film is designed primarily for your entertainment. Although the producers have taken every possible precaution to ensure the accuracy of materials and other documentation used in this motion picture, the producers bear no responsibility of any kind for inaccuracies, irregularities, or other errors in the claims and cases discussed herein. The theories presented in this film with regard to UFOs or life on other planets are either those of eyewitnesses, researchers, or the producers, and no claim to other authenticity or validity of these theories is either made or implied.
Affirmative.
Telemetry in launch condition.
Affirmative.
Missile and internal DC.
Affirmative.
Pressurization complete.
Affirmative.